All right, so here we are again doing another podcast, and we finally have the lovely Grandy in person. Not through Discord. Yeah, which is really exciting for us.
Is actually real.
Yeah, and this time you're gonna get another discussion. We're really debating between amongst ourselves, like what can we discuss, even if it's for much later in development. It's still things that you need to consider fairly early. I think people don't usually realize how early systems and like monetization actually play a part in your entire economic structure for the game. So we consider titling this like, so how does one make money from a free-to-play game? Now we all know the obvious answers. We know the current market trends. We know what we don't like as both players and developers. But at the end of the day, we do need to find the middle ground of what can sustain the game at the studio, even if it's separate from like a Patreon, realizing that Patreon should be used to, let's say, committed soldiers that want to be more part of the development, while just players who want to just play the game and contribute in any way that's possible that's not through a subscription model. We came up with a few ideas. We discussed it with you guys on Discord and amongst ourselves to figure out which systems we would find, I'd say, less intrusive and acceptable for a free-to-play game.
Non-greedy.
Yeah, something that's just enough that can be sustainable because very...
And still to keep up with the theme of the game, like make it part of the world.
Yeah, it has to suit thematically, I'd say. So, of course... We did mention on Discord like very early on that a progression system is a natural fit. You get your ranks, you go with the ranks, from sergeant to staff sergeant, move on through the ranks, which is fine as a progression system goes, but then it immediately opens up the question of, okay, so what do you get? Return for leveling. We did talk about helmet customization, and we know that it's something we do want to utilize. We're just not sure how yet, but because... I bring it up because you mentioned the theme.
Yes.
Customizing helmets in Vietnam just goes so well together. But it can't be the only thing that's like a monetizable asset. So it's part of a larger system. And Grandy, you, I know, are familiar with more of these mechanics than like me personally. You brought some examples from Rocket League and Deep Rock Galactic.
Yeah.
And certain examples that our soldiers in Discord also provided us with. So I think we can just start with just the battle pass. And when I say battle pass, here's the problem with these systems and what's interesting for a podcast, because you just say battle pass and just
so many preconceptions about what that is.
So many things. Yeah, it's a meme already by this point as a mechanic, you could say. So at the end of the day, you have to weigh in what's the advantages and the disadvantages. So I think if we look at Battle Pass system, which is something that I personally didn't use much, because I think our generation is a bit more immune to the whole fear of missing out on skins or exclusive events. Like the only real comparison I can give to you, Ahmed, is Heroes of the Storm, which we did play it a lot. Do you remember spending money in that game?
No, I love the skins. I want a lot of them. I never bought anything. Only with the money I got from leveling up slowly, and it never really was enough for the really cool ones, legendary ones.
And it's designed that way. Yeah, it is designed that way. It's designed to have some feeling of progression for the people that don't invest monetarily into it, but enough that you feel like you had some choice at some level.
I've been looking at you can buy the gems or something, I think, and I look at how much money you need to put in, and it's always an exact amount that is enough for one skin or something like that, and a bit. So I know it's trick to make me buy more and more and more.
Sure. Using in-game currency, that's always enough for what you want and a little bit more.
So I don't like the feeling that they're trying to make me buy more. I don't mind customizing. I don't mind to get some. I don't even mind to purchase some if it's done in good taste. If I feel like I get my money worth.
Yeah, and I mean, Valorant and Dodge, for example, have got really ripped into just for how expensive some of these things are, like 30 quid a skin, which is
What? For 4 indie games in one.
yeah. And I mean, and it comes back to how do you do free-to-play games? You're giving it away for free. The base is there, and how much of the base you give away for free is kind of up for debate. But I guess the one thing we have a slight advantage in is that it's, at the moment at least, sort of more about hobby passionate and going into it. And so we don't have an investor at our back screaming at us on the daily to get these things in.
We've been there, and it's really fun not to be there anymore.
So we try to think of a way to get this into the game so it will become sustainable for us, but done correctly and with good taste, without making the players feel like it's like we're using them.
Yeah, I mean, you can never. It's always
Like a mutual understanding.
yeah. There's
A mutual relationship, or like
yeah, and that's like that for every multiplayer game in history, because if you don't have players, you don't have the multiplayer game. So
Yeah, you need the players to stick around to buy into whatever you're trying to sell them.
exactly. So
The two-way stream.
you can keep them engaged with, like, let's call it manipulative, predatory, or I'd say more manipulative, like I mentioned before, on the fear of missing out, or just, like you said, or some big prices.
Yeah.
So in the subject of FOMO, that I agree with you that I don't like the idea that this is, I don't know, Christmas event, you have to play it, you got like a weekend. I don't like the idea. But we did talk about, during the discussion that we had yesterday about the customization and stuff, we came up with the idea of war tag, yeah?
Yeah.
So it's and then it sort of roll out to be like, so it's like an event, because the war is an event, and if you participated in that event, you got a medal or a small token to show that you were there. It's something simple. So it's not even gonna be something that we think that it's gonna be behind a paywall, but it is still an event. So we still thought that maybe doing those timed event is something that we want to do.
But even then, you have to understand that what you're talking about is essentially an achievement system with extra bells and whistles, because you participate in something,
Yeah.
you get an achievement for it. The only difference is you get a visual indication that's outside. It's not a
I think it's nice to do events.
That's fine. That's for, it's fine because we tie it into how you keep players engaged.
Yeah, I think the North Korean general with the roads of like, I've been in all these wars.
That's what I hopes would happen after like 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so incentives for people to participate in certain events or maps like don't reset as often as other maps, and like
Yeah, you like have a set of 2 or 3 maps maybe centered around this particular wall.
Yeah.
And people playing on those maps on any server would get progression to it.
Yeah, we will release these new maps together with the events or whatever.
There's options around that. And that's an idea for mostly sort of
Engagement.
yes, it's engagement and bringing people back to the game. Reasons to come back and load up the game.
So this is why we got it. Like, we would not like to take money for these stuff. They're supposed to be linked to a certain period of time.
There's a balance. Yeah, there's definitely a balance.
And I think for a game that's relatively open potentially to user-generated content, for us to have a thematic package, for example, to deliver a map and an event around, let's say, a Vietnam event like the Tet Offensive, where you could actually have these kind of more thematically lenient events that actually relate to the core of the game, which people can then use the map for whatever, uses they want to or won't want that. But it helps us, at least on the official servers and the events, to, I'd say, curate the experience to what we feel the OG, like, Born to Build experience should be. So I like that as an idea of an extension of a progression system with a bonus incentive. But to bring it back to, again, the monetization, which is the focus of what we're trying to discuss. And you can that was a good example of one of the problems that we usually run to, because you started thinking of what incentives I can give players to, like, engage with the game.
Retention.
Yeah,
You start thinking about retention first, and then
That's what I was trying to say. And then we got to it's another example of how hard it is to strike that balance for something that is people will want it, we want to pay for it, but how exactly are you doing it?
But am I missing something? I don't think these events are paid correctly. I mean, we don't.
You're talking about another type of content.
Exactly.
That we've thought.
Yeah, I know. Which came as a result of trying to think of monetization options and just showed where our headspace is at. We were like, let's design a monetization system. All right, here's how we retain our players. Like, and something that we want to give. So I think I'll bring it back to the Battle Pass. And if we remove the negative associations that we have with Battle Pass, which is timed exclusive content and the fear of missing out, and thinking, all right, with our particular minimalistic design, and the fact that we want to keep it, at least I personally, I want to keep the theme of Vietnam and the weapons grounded. So I don't want to eventually reach a situation like in Counter-Strike where, you know, you have the SAS soldier decked out in full gear with like, a bright neon Kalashnikov.
No.
It's not something that I see for the game. Maybe it's, maybe we'll enable it for like if moderators,
April Fools of that. Well,
sure,
stupid.
something limited, maybe just for the whole of
The character that we already have.
Gert.
No,
Gert.
the other character.
Gert 2?
They're not humanoid character.
Oh, we haven't revealed them yet, though.
Yeah.
But we'll reveal them now. Let's
I don't even know about that.
and you're not gonna reveal it now. It's not exactly a character. No, I'm not. I'm gonna leave this. We'll reveal it when it's appropriate. And trust me, it'll be it's extremely stupid.
It's too kind.
Extremely stupid.
We already have an idea.
So
The battle passes, yeah. But even just underpinning battle passes, we have the problem of it's a Vietnam era game, and we don't want it to look stupid. Yeah, we want to keep that feeling. You want to have sort of the feel of the brush. You want to have like the teams roughly representing the groups that are in at the time.
actual units.
So it's gonna be modest.
Period. So it's modest, exactly. When you're doing a free game, a lot of the free games you find, if you look at Valorant, if you look at Rocket League, if you look at Fortnite, to some degree, they have so much scope inherent to their core theme. Like you have Star Wars things, like literally recently, we had Star Wars characters come in and have different skins.
Yep, The Witcher.
The Witcher has been involved in like tons of different games.
Because the setting of these games is part of the sandbox, which means
And it's fantasy.
yeah, and anything works. So
We don't have that to work with. No, that's the bottom line.
So we make it harder than ourselves.
Yeah, we have.
So we talked about the idea of the helmets because it's known that the soldiers in Vietnam sort of expressed themselves using the helmets. So
sort of they did.
it's the
Protested with their helmets.
So you can use tons and tons of graffitis, so that's textures. We talked about actual 3D accessories that we can add to the helmet itself.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Like, and from there, the idea of adding accessories to the entire body.
Yeah.
So
And of course, the color skins.
yeah, so the way we currently have it planned out, or at least as an initial version here, I'm theorized, is that the grunt will be just a player character because we want to add Charlie eventually and other skins. So we decided to separate it into 3 main categories, which only one of them goes into a more expanded version of itself as a subcategory. So I'm going to go from the most simple to the more complex. First, you just have the skin of the character, which means
Texture files.
no, but that I'm speaking in that particular the skin color of the soldier combined with his eyes and eyebrows, which is just
And
the basic one.
The body.
The uniform is separate.
The body. The base layer of the body.
The best layer of the body. That's usually something we're not gonna again. Some games will give you like the color palette that you can choose, so you get the neon pink monsters choose walking. Like we're not gonna have that. I like the hell let loose concept of giving names to like particular faces or skins.
Oh yeah.
So we left out certain names that we want to give and just use that as like that's the soldier, that's the type of soldier, that's the skin, even though most of the details on the skin itself will be the same. The next level, which is a bit more complex, is just the uniform. When I say uniform, I don't mean just the top, just the pants, just the boots. I'm talking all of it,
Head to toe. Yeah.
head to toe, not including the helmet, which is the third one. And that is the more complex one, which we think we should open to a more subcategory of customization, meaning that while a helmet can come with a uniform in certain colors, which you cannot change outside of that particular skin for the uniform, you can mess around with certain things on the helmet. So whether it's putting 3D objects on the, whether it's a magazine, a whisk, like a flask, whiskey flask, cigarette, or whatever, anything we want to add there that you can maybe place in pre-designed areas. Yeah. That could be a nice extension. The fact that we, it's going to be abusable, but that's what soldiers do. We're going to give like a small text area, customizable text with certain limitations. Okay.
I think
people would still get court-martialed with their helmet not
going into a lot of detail.
There is some point I want to make, because I'm always mentioning that this kind of stuff can change the competitiveness of the game. So people can abuse it in order to hide themselves, whatever. I get that. We don't aim for this game to be hardcore competitive. It's for fun. It's a game. So it doesn't have to be completely perfect and balanced.
That's fine, but we did put the limit on the fact that we're not going to have neon colors and that break the actual visual language of the setting. Let's call it that.
So it's realistic.
In a way, yeah. I mean, realistic for, soldiers made out of cardboard boxes. But yeah, it's inspired by realism, I'd say. Which is why it's why we decided to go with more articulated reload animations and the weapon models on the side. Look like the actual weapons, but from first person.
We sort of pick and choose what part of the army we want to take, and then the rest we do just boxing.
So if we tie it back to if we imagine these separate systems of, I'd say one system for customization and what can be included in a battle pass, for example.
Right. So you've talked just about the player character.
Exactly.
There are things around it too that you can go through. Names heights are probably the biggest one for us, just simply because it would be easy in the sense that when you get killed, you have a name like you were killed by this person using this weapon. And that person could have stats on there, or their rank, or their certain type of background. And you'd even started experimenting with like scoreboard type of thing.
Sure.
The avatar?
Yeah, I mean, we went through all the Rocket League. Yeah. So they have the avatar, which is just taken from Steam, but we could have our own avatars. Avatar borders, like styles of avatar borders, and again, we got hundreds of those. The backgrounds, which...
The banner,
yeah, which is sort of animated, not some interactable or colorable elements on there. And then there's the title, which is beneath the name, which is like either rewards for ranks in Rocket League, at least. So we could have like lieutenant rank or someone else that's a certain type. But then sort of other just titles, maybe they're from mastering, or maybe they're from events or randomly awarded.
Correct.
Like there's a ton of options for that in terms of customization, and there's not so much monetization options, but just progression and retention options.
Yeah, but because a battle pass is something you usually pay for, so the question comes back to, is it something that's going to be limited? Or is it something that's just always there, and more battle passes just keep being added when you add like a new skin? It's like which comes this entire
there's no way to avoid some stuff being
under behind a paywall. Of course, as long as it doesn't affect gameplay too much and gives it advantage. That's why I'm very careful with what we, if we play too much around with the silhouette of the character that you don't want to mess with, which is why I'm finally leaving it to like the helmet, the head area. If you want to customize and whatever, that's fine. But the uniform, the way that it works, I mean, today I showed you, we discussed team colors. Like I always hit it in Unreal when all the skins just were painted blue or just painted red, and we decided that the best solution to keep the immersion in is that the only colors you will see on other soldiers are the outlines of your teammates, while the other team, let's say the red team, will always appear as they are without any outlines. So that way you keep the military theme going. You have soldiers that can wear all the same uniform, but the ones that are highlighted are teammates, which you can see from a certain distance, maybe a little bit behind of a wall.
Had some problems with that in other games.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But that's the deal. It's to show my perspective how far I'm going in the fact that I want to keep the military theme consistent throughout the skins, throughout the battle passes, or whatever we choose to call them.
Yeah.
We might not call them battle pass. It might be that, but because it will be maybe exclusive to a certain amount of time, Maybe it's repeating every.
Maybe they're always there and you just pick and choose when you get them.
It's just something that they're. And then my question is,
maybe under a paywall it could be like, I don't know, like 6 months later we decide to make them free. I don't know.
here's what I think about exclusivity.
Yes.
At least about exclusivity. I would think that players who joined the game during alpha, for example, and we release, let's say, a battle pass, whatever we call it, during alpha, I think it would be appropriate. Things we do release in the alpha would be exclusive. For example, if you ask,
They will get a war tag.
something, it doesn't matter. Even get a title.
I'm gonna put that war tag in the game.
I don't mind if it's even a skin, to be honest. People who joined the game early and were part of helping us shape it should, I think, have this kind of badge of honor to carry with their accounts.
A lot of the games I can think of have that in some form or another. In Rocket League, you've got the Alpha Cap, which they gave out during Alpha, and those are now worth ridiculous amounts of money.
And here's the Storm at the profile pictures with the alpha test, for example. So I think as part of the alpha, maybe as part of a beta, we could have these really, like, these will only be available during the testing phases. And well, one day, wherever that happens, 2045, we release the game. We gone gold. Then we release the new battle passes, and these ones will be just probably always permanent.
Yeah.
And could possibly, by the way, unlock the events, for example, of a certain thing that we want to, do if we choose to tie it to a certain battle pass, but it's not necessary. So I'd say for now, we agreed that that's sort of the area, and take the things we can customize that are simpler for us, like UI, add the limited way we want to do the skins.
Yeah.
Focus on helmet customizations for a bit more personality with custom text. Maybe the texture for the card will be able to change, kind of like the sprays.
We're trying to build it as we go.
No, of course, but all of it is building as we go. I'm just trying to say this is like our vision of the future could look, which is just
Initially,
which I think is a good way to start. Is there anything else like that you saw from? I think what got me to that is you showed me G4 Galactic and they had the supporter pack,
Correct.
which is just a bunch of skins for the weapons. But their customization, for example, is a limit for us because they have the alternate weapon, not just the skin, but the alternate model, which is not something I want to get into. Like I did ask you, and I think I even modeled it, so I'll be able to show it. I did like the key chains kind of thing, the
Gun buddies.
yeah.
Valorant has that combat for it.
So that can work.
gun buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like little, you sort like screw in a little thing and it's like a keyring that comes off the gun.
Remember that I modeled a few?
Okay.
The keyring?
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I don't know it.
But another like thing that you always see when you're holding a weapon,
Yeah.
it's like on there. It's just like, it's like having the floppy dice in your car. Like it's just,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah, but on your,
Which for me is still within the realm of realistic enough not to be ridiculous.
so attach things to the gun.
Exactly. Which is fine, completely fine by me. So, because of the limited way our skins look, because most of them are textured with like low poly assets to give it that voxely kind of flavor to it, while still keeping the weapon profile as is, we will most likely focus on the soldiers themselves, not the weapons. But doesn't mean that, for example, maybe one of the battle pass. What's the name of the Australian? Do you remember? Was the Australian or New Zealand units that came to fight in Vietnam? They came with a particular rifle,
Right.
for example. I'm just thinking that maybe when it's appropriate for a certain unit that you introduce,
Right.
maybe we can add like some kind of variant in a different model that serves the same purpose of an existing weapon.
It's has the fake stats and it's just,
Yeah, it doesn't add a weapon class. It just replaces something else if you want it.
yeah.
That's maybe a direction I'm willing
Yeah.
to go through, but both me and Randy agree that we want to keep the arsenal limited. We don't want to add more and more and more weapons.
If you have two guns with the same role, you're better off just having succinct weapons with completely different properties that fill a certain role or play style, and you just mold those together
Yeah,
for
and
what your play style is.
And even the way I'm imagining, like Charlie, the Vietnamese, the way they fight, they will still have the exact mirror versions of roles, I would say, in US weapons, but with their own little quirks.
Sure.
So I think that's a good possible way to consider weapon skins, is just to replace an existing weapon, getting with some class of something else.
Yeah,
that works.
You could.
But we researched our weapons. We did things that worked in Vietnam, even if it had limited use, like the M1 Garand. It's such an iconic rifle that couldn't get a pass. But the gist of it is, I think that is the basics of what we understood. That this can work for us. We can open a Patreon for those who want to be more on the development side, and we want to give something that's a part of integrated into the launcher. Maybe it's just wherever we decide to do it on our website, doesn't matter. Be an option to not only reward players for testing the game early, but helping us as a studio at least, have something able to just keep us keep the lights on, and So I think that is there been any other system that you guys discussed, something that you saw that you liked? Do you think of
Many stuff we don't like.
It's easy to point at,
Like a loot box.
And loot boxes are illegal basically in a lot of places.
Blueprints was an interesting one market these games. So that's what they moved to. There used to be crates and keys, like TF2 originally was. You buy keys, buy crates. Sometimes events had crates and keys of their own.
TF2 is like that still to this day?
TF2 still is, yeah. Rocket League changed from that to, instead of pressing a button, using a key on a crate, and it sort of generated a thing, and it's something random, you instead get blueprints, which are a random item, but you can see what that item is,
And you get it for free.
you get it sort of for free, and then so you pay to unlock it. So you can get like painted items or certified, like certification is another thing. How many certificates?
CS, right?
So that's not gambling because you know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But
In CF like that now, you buy the key, or TF2, I can't remember one of them. I remember I had boxes and I had to buy the keys to open them.
Yeah, still, I think CS still does it, yeah.
by the way, it's gambling with extra stats.
It is, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's just preying on the same. I mean, to be fair, we live in a society where everything is doing that. McDonald's are trying to get to the perfect level of crispiness, so they use the same potato. They have whole labs dedicated to try and make it more addictive. Like, it's everywhere for people to try and to make more money. Whereas we just want things that make sense.
And it make you happy.
Yeah.
We want to bring joy to the world.
Violent Vietnam era gun game.
Most wholesome game.
Not that violent. I remember I had the conversation. I remember somebody talked to me recently and said like, "Oh, so what do you do?" I'm like, "Well, I have my job, and I also develop a video game in my spare time." It's like, "Oh, what is it?" So it's a shooter game. And she was like, "Oh, what is that? What is that? Do you ever the other jobs? Do we ever say to somebody like have a person like, oh,
You're a stripper? Oh.
yeah, it's like you
That's the kind of
Working a bank. Oh,
And I showed her like the grunt, the visuals, or like, does this look like extremely violent to you? It's like, yeah, but having kids, playing something about Vietnam, which is such a terrible war. And my counter argument to that, I know it's off topic, just I told her that what got me into history was playing Medal of Honor. I like
yourself too. Yeah.
So, but taking it to the first person, like Giant route, which was a fairly spooky game for me to play as a VLAD, but I got so invested in it. I remember my dad saw me playing it, and it's like, oh, is that D-Day? Somebody did D-Day on a video game, and he was hyped.
Yeah.
And he sat down next to me, and he wanted to see how they did it, because he's a big history buff. And that game, it was in my passion to study history, and I know a lot, not everything, but I'm fascinated with historical events, wars, and whatnot. It would really open the door for me from a violent video game, which doesn't have any blood, by the way. Medal of Honor has no blood.
Huh.
And
didn't know that.
I'll be honest, I've never even. Somebody asked me, will there be blood in Born to Build? And I'm like, I didn't even think about it. No.
Why should there be blood?
Yeah, if we don't have the splatters, it's not real. Yeah.
Well, it's gonna be kind of gore.
So, gore and ragdoll.
Yeah. What did you think today? You're gonna
hide on the body. If we need the bodies, they're applying.
You're gonna juice his head.
You said ragdolls, but for me, there's something I love about the Ace of Spades, 1,000 yard. They're
vertical and
there's something I always loved about that. I think we'll start with that before we have ragdolls. Oh, the share that is
just easier.
Just staring at the sky. But
I just want to have ragdoll on intensity 5. So I want to see them stats.
But here's something to consider when you're developing a game. That might be an interesting thing to bring up if we're already talking about the no blood thing, which is fine. Okay. But let's say now you're in front of a publisher, you're talking about this game, Born to Build, and then they're looking at your customization system. And they're like, cigarettes? Is that cigarettes? And like people in the States, I think, are more concerned about cigarettes than guns.
You can
At least in certain parts.
Concerned about a lot
more
PC. Simply another
more PC. That's doing PC.
What?
accepted.
More guns, less smokes? That's PC. That's
Not including cigarettes, not including blood, not including.
Remember they did that in Heroes of the Storm and I was pissed off. Pissed off. Tychus, like one of my favorite characters, who has a cigar throughout
They didn't.
all of StarCraft 2. One of the patches, they just removed the... They
It's
just,
annoying because it was very iconic with the character
Yeah.
and stock of one.
Raider, he had it enslaved like the folded cigarette
Yeah.
thing, removed. And because they want to make it T for Jane or no, maybe even younger than that, they want to integrate it. So that's something, for example, when you're developing a game and you're going to sit in front of a publisher, that's something that I'm going to have to explain.
Yeah.
And I'm saying like, listen, all right, yeah, we want the cigarettes because it's still a war game
Yeah.
and it's Vietnam and people have cigarettes on their helmets and we want to sell the city. And that's part of it. There's no smoking in the game. You won't see a cigarette. You won't see a grunt smoking it. So
You want to show reality as it is, not like in a horrible way, but you don't want to hide reality is.
that's fine. But a publisher will tell you, okay, so this game might get a mature rating or we'll get an adults only something.
Mature rating for a blocky game.
Exactly. Hey, you know,
Maybe it might be good for us.
exactly. You know what?
Could be, yeah.
That might be a niche.
This is a game for adults to play with.
If I remember something from being a teenager, being younger, when you see something and it's like, no, we turn it on to play. This game is free and I'm too young to play. All right,
What he's saying is, we already know we're going to get to in jail if we ever go to America.
of that then it ties into monetization because a publisher is a way to monetize your studio at the end of the day, so you decide to go that route, and it's not something that I'm in a particular hurry to do, to be honest. It has advantages, of course. There's great publishers that I would love to work with, but if you want to negotiate for cigarettes, if you want to negotiate for not intrusive monetization mechanics, and if you want to stand your ground, you better show up with a player base.
Yeah.
And so you see these guys,
They don't care.
they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And there's more.
Actually, they love it.
Yeah, that's why they're here. So we're not going to alienate them. We're going to keep going. If we won't be able to find a publisher and we'll be just a semi-successful, passionate community project, fine. I'd rather take that
That would be great.
as a nice, send off to what our dream of Business Space could be, and we get a nice multiplayer game that we can play with ourselves and friends and other people can play it too. That's fine. We'll move on to another game. We have other game ideas. It's all right. But we would prefer if this would be like the main one that we get to. You always need to remember, because people do, and I understand that people get pissed off at game developers. And gamers and game developers is a very, very, very complicated and nuanced line of communication, which is almost impossible to see the same worldview. It's really hard. And so it doesn't help that a lot of devs will show a lot of their technical stuff. They will go on GDC and explain how, I did the animation rigging system like this, and I did the sound system like that, but they usually don't go to what's really going on behind the scenes of the more things that are uncomfortable to talk about, which is why I think we wanted to talk about the monetization system, because it is there. We have been asked about it multiple times, and we always kind of avoided the question because we're like, we know it has to be there.
Yeah, they do the what and the how, but not particularly the why.
Exactly. So you need to understand that, why don't you just do it like this? Why not just, put a tip system and somebody just gives you money if you want? Because it has to be of added value to the player and the game developer.
Yeah.
And if you stand your ground in these things and you prove that with a limited audience that can hopefully expand into something more, that this is what works for your game and your target audience, you'll have more leg room, more maneuvering room to negotiate, which is important for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's just healthier for the game in general. If it was just a game, scratch, not relating to Ace of Spades, something completely the original idea that we, started from scratch, we might not have even
Made it free to play.
Yeah, it just probably would have been great because, to be honest, it would have been much easier for us if board to build would just cost money.
Yeah.
Of course.
But I think because we want to reach a bigger audience and because of the emphasis on user-generated content that we want to support eventually, it's a relationship of trust, and I think it's better for the devs, especially those with at least less reputation in the mainstream industry, to let's first give out, see the product, play it, which is again why we decided to not open a Patreon until we have something playable.
Yeah.
And we're still sticking by it. I think that's the heart of what we see as how we want to monetize our product.
And you have to choose one.
Yeah, you have to choose.
And the earlier you choose it, and if this is true of all software development that ever existed, and a lot of other things, the earlier you make a decision, the less it costs. And but you just change things earlier than later. And so many games going behind a paywall, maybe they just take it as a paywall and that's fine if they just decide it as that. But free to play especially is a complex animal. Like you've got to find and strike a balance within the confines of your systems.
Yeah.
And you designing that early on is really.
I think we trying to explain to the players that we are the way we want to monetize the game is a way that we want to do it respect for the player base, but we still need money to survive.
Yeah.
So it
has to be a two-way street. There's just no way about it.
There's what we're trying to explain to the player that please give us money and we'll try to reward you for it.
Yeah, not just for
as
playing.
much as we can.
Not just for play. Here's skin and here's something to customize your soldier with. Here's proof of purchase that you can represent to other players, which is also a big factor of multiplayer games. And it's to show what you have, what you earn, whether it's the medals for events that you did, limited time events, or even if it's battle passes you purchased during early access and things like that. Anything that we can think of that we can reward players for participating in the game, but helping us as a studio, because at the end of the day, every game development studio is a business. And a business has to be profitable at the end of the day. Now, lots of companies rely on growth. Outside of the gaming industry, I'd say more. You don't have necessarily to break even yet, but you show growth. That's good. That's good. More growth. Maybe for game developers, it can be more about the growth of player base.
Yeah.
You might have, 500,000 players. It's not profitable yet, but you have 500,000 players. So you might be able to eventually find a way to monetize it, which is why it's less stressful. It's about finding what works for us as players and as developers to understand, we're comfortable with this. To understand where we're coming from,
It's like we need to find a way to sleep at night.
Yeah.
But we also need to find a way to sleep at night on a bed in house.
That's the name of the video. We need to find a way to sleep at night. Preferably in a house.
Yeah. And I agree completely. And I think that being open about these things, and think about it this way, most game developer studios that are not independent will not be able to discuss these things, because once you discuss something like that, and then a week afterwards, Tencent comes in with a check that can buy your entire studio 5 times, or you're like, well, guys, sorry, we're just going to change the whole thing completely. Which is why I think it'll never happen to us, because our vision for the studio is to keep it boutique and small. We're not having any plans to expand beyond our capabilities. We just want the option to work on games that we enjoy developing, and that's...
we're like 10 years from now, we're like huge headquarters.
What's going to happen?
We're not really game workers. We're not overselling it to ourselves either. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, of course, we're being realistic about it. I mean, we're realistic about the competitiveness of the market, how hard it is to carve out your own niche and to really build something and establish something. And we just saw, like I said to you the other day, the Back for Blood video. And you see, studios with full production and budgets and just going about making these decisions, that you're sitting there pulling your hair out. It's like, is nobody there playing these games? Is it just people making? That's how it feels sometimes. I think to a lot of players, it feels like, who is making these games? I remember when I played Warcraft 3 Reforged, and I never felt so hollow in my life when I played that. It was to see such a game being developed by, which is sure on a budget limit, but still just, I'm not really blaming the developers, I'm blaming Blizzard for...
Okay, in a circle of producers almost, sometimes, and even the Jagex of Blizzard is exactly the same. The main visionary then left, or was kicked out, and then whatever they came up with shipped off and got back a couple of months later.
And we should thank them, because that's why we're here today.
Yeah,
I thank Jagex a lot for what they did. I'll be honest. It's in the video. You were closer to the core of Ace of Spades than both of us were. I think we
Young players. we weren't really
No, we played a lot.
go in the community.
We weren't a part of any though gaming community. I'd say we were usually
Our own community.
yeah, played it a lot and we enjoyed it. So I get what you're saying, and that mishandling, that feeling that you got, that was
And it's a whole.
it's true. And I think to strike and find the balance to really make it work is within reach. It's possible. We took the time to do the pre-production, and we're closing in on finally tying together the gameplay system to start at least.
Yeah.
Tying them
I
together.
really hope, because this would help us make the games that we like they have stuck in our mind.
Yeah, especially even just for Board to Build. I mean, we have tons of discussions about like the way what we want to do about the gameplay, how we're
to take it.
where to take it, game modes. And I think that would be a nice discussion for the next podcast. We can discuss a little bit how we like what will be the main focus game mode for us to begin with. How will we approach different types of mechanics that we have in life, classes,
How those hard to make gameplay.
exactly how it all comes together, and to just I'd say outline so they can be a bit more in our headspace. I think it can be easy for us to forget because we're so close to it
Yeah.
that outside it can sometimes seem like you're just working on the nuts and bolts of the game. What about the gameplay? And it's like gameplay is something that you can design in your head, that and you write and you do iterations and think about it. Think how many things changed with Born to Build in its gameplay before we even started experimenting with the game.
Everything.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be crazy.
And that's why because of our experience also with other games in production in general, we always know to start with the most basic
MVPs.
MVPs, see what works, and that's going to go the same for the monetization system. We're going to start with, what works best, can be focused, and can generate solid revenue for us. It's not limiting.
Yeah.
It's not.
I mean, we've outlined here like a ton of different options for what we think or what we have imagined so far of content ideas that we potentially could monetize in somewhere,
True.
or just produce. So like there may be more, and we'd be very interested to hear those ideas.
Yeah, I think that's what we should sign off on tonight. If you guys have any further ideas on what would you be willing to put up with, engaging a fun way to support the studio while enhancing the game experience without pushing it outside of the setting of Vietnam and the general, I'd say, art direction and visual style that we have going.
Can't wait to hear the ideas.
Yeah, I'll play.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll go back to trolling, and we'll see you guys in the next one. To comment, follow us when you need to follow us, and any final words before we go back to the fucking mosquitoes.
Keep safe.
Good to be here.
Good to have you, man.
Yeah, really good.
We'll do
It's
it.
in the flesh.